Hello everybody. This is going to be I guess my second video. The first one showing my face, but so here goes. I wanted to kind of give back. I've usually go to YouTube for a lot of my answers to questions. You know, whether it's working on my car or trying to figure something out. Chances are somebody else on the internet and has made a YouTube video. In some cases, not so much. Sometimes they're a little bit hard to find, and with this one, um, it's about servers. I have been building computers and machines for several years, and I kind of work with a computer security um, as a hobby, and but building machines is I'm no stranger to that. I've got two NAS for free boxes that I run. For file servers, and was running a Windows Server 2012 off of Intel i7 shuttle PC for a media server, and I've been really interested in branching out into virtual machines here recently, and I picked up on eBay several weeks ago a Dell R710 enterprise grade server. It had 48 gigs of RAM, dual hexa-core chips in it, so 24 cores. I put some hard drives in it, and it's been an interesting learning curve getting that all set up, and then getting into the hypervisor and all of that. But I wanted to start this first video off with just the hardware on an R710 with Proxmox. That was the hypervisor that I went with. I tried Zen at first and didn't really like it, but got frustrated within a day or two and switched over to Proxmox, and I've just made many leaps and bounds of progress with working with it. I think probably because of my familiarity, very limited, but still some familiarity with using Linux, and because Proxmox basically works off of a Debian Linux base. Um, so, and I'll get to those other videos. I want to do different ones when it comes to Proxmox and the things that I was trying to accomplish with that, so we'll get there. But as far as the Dell R710, what I'm hoping to do with this video is just put one place as kind of a go-to starting point if you go out there and you're interested in doing something like this. So the first thing is to, my advice is to know your hardware. You can look these things up. I just have the Amazon page up for most of these things. Some I did order off of there, but the actual server I got off of eBay. Got a really good deal on the one that I got. I think with shipping, which they're big and heavy, it was still, I think, less than $300 for the first one that I got. And then, so, best advice, no matter where it is you're getting it from, know what it is you're looking at. Know what kind of a deal you're getting. There's Generation 1s, which, obviously are the first ones that came out, slightly older. Even this Gen 2 one that I have, I think it was came out in 2012. So you can imagine, I mean, this thing's several years old, but it's still, kind of a beast today compared to, what you would normally have around the house. But still, great machines, and you can get some really good deals out there. Yeah, just be, cognizant of what you're getting, whether it's got a single chip in it, how much RAM it's got in it, the things that come along with it. All of these things, are very important, and will change the price accordingly. But I thought I had ordered the one that I purchased. I thought it came with the Enterprise iDRAC card. I was wrong. It was the Express one that was built in, and so I ended up going out and buying one of these add-on cards. The iDRAC 6 that's embedded on the system works perfectly fine, but it's shared across the NIC cards. So it's interesting the way that they do that. But adding the iDRAC 6 Enterprise card was only a few dollars. I think I did get it off of Amazon. It gives you a dedicated NIC and an SD card slot, but that SD card slot, I don't find it useful. Um, if you put just any old SD card in there, no matter the size, it'll only recognize it as 512 meg. So not very useful. So you have to buy their V-Flash SD cards, and you can get those on eBay as well if you want to be able to put anything large enough like an ISO file on there, which is essentially what some people use them for. But I haven't actually found a need to do it, so I don't waste your money on those. So as for the benefits of using this card, when you plug it in and you have that dedicated NIC, the speed, the refresh rate that you're going to get, try using just the Express beforehand like I did, and then the speed difference in loading the page and being able to get to all the different features and everything. It's just an amazing difference between the two. So highly recommend getting one of those. And again, you can see here it goes from anywhere from $10 up to probably $60 there. Don't know the difference between what I'm looking at on these, but just as examples. Same thing with the RAM. So you can depends on what it comes with. You can upgrade the RAMs, but sticks. But just keep in mind it's all about the configuration. So mine happen to come with 48 gigs of RAM. There are, in the BIOS, when you're setting things up, there are several different configurations that you can run. Some of them are optimized for your system, and some of those updates come along with firmware updates, and we'll get there on how to do firmware updates here in a minute. But as for the RAM, it matters whether or not it's the double ranked versus quad ranked RAM sticks. If you're using a quad stick, you can only put it in one slot, and there's all kinds of rules when it comes to the RAM. But there's optimized configurations for how you install them, and then there's the speeds that go along with it. I noticed that my system was running at 800 megahertz, and I thought, well, these RAM sticks are supposed to do 1333, so why am I not getting the best speed? So I went in and I changed the settings in the BIOS, and then of course these things take forever to boot up an enterprise grade server. So all of this trial and error, it took me half a day to figure out that the reason why it wasn't booting, it's not that it couldn't support it. It was the power draw, essentially, is what the problem was. A lot of surfing, the net to try to figure all these out and the different configurations and, what's optimized and what's not. So basically, you've got your banks and the channels, the slots that you put the cards in. You need to mirror the RAM for each chip that you have in there. And, if you put really big RAM in the very first slot and only in those, then you can probably get up to 1333 depending on the power supply that you have, and we'll get there too. But with mine, I had it in the first and the second ones, so the highest I could get was 1066, but again, that's dependent on the power supply as well, and again, we'll talk about that. So just keep in mind, there's a lot of different things that come into play when it comes to the RAM. And if you're mixing them, you've already got some in there and you got some someplace else. It's all gonna downclock basically to, I think, this is the way regular ones work, to the lowest speed that they can do. So just be careful with what you do. Let's see here. So the power supplies. This was the biggest catch for me because my intended goal with using this Proxmox, I wanted to set up a virtual machine with GPU pass-through, and one of the biggest gotchas was, I got this thing and it had dual 570 watt power supplies in it, and I thought, well, I don't want to run both of them. That's just too much power draw. I don't need it to be redundant, so I just kept the other one unplugged. Well, that causes an error message. So you can actually just pull the other one out and run it with one in there. It's perfectly fine. But those 570 watt power supplies just don't have enough juice to be able to run the RAM at 1066, nor will it allow you to put a graphics card, even if you have one that fits in the ×8 PCI Express card slots. If you put one in there, or you try to crank the RAM up to 1066, you'll basically get a power error and it'll reboot. So that was my biggest lesson learned. You have to, if you want to do anything, get you one of the 870 watt power supplies. And again, you can get those on Amazon or eBay. I think I got a set of 2 for, I don't know, $30 or $40. It was you know, a decent deal, and I think I got those off of eBay. You know, the power supplies, get you those, because that's going to solve several of the problems depending on the project that you're trying to do and the speed that you want to run your RAM at as well. Another thing is hard drives. Mine didn't come with any, but I did get 2 of the drive caddies that came with it, so I mounted my own. And of course I proceeded to mount them in the wrong holes, and when I plugged them in, you know, I didn't get any power to it, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, I had picked the one that said SATA on it because I was mounting SATA drives, and the backplane on it is SAS, but it's SAS and SATA, so it supports both. So don't worry about that, but it's important on the drive caddy. The holes where you put the screws for the hard drive, you have to pick the ones that say SAS, even if it's a SATA hard drive, just because that mounts it in the tray far enough back to where when you put it in the chassis, it actually, you know, hits the back plane and will get power. So that took me a minute too, unfortunately. So another lesson learned. Let's see here. The other thing in these cards that's in these R710s is the risers. So what you can mount as far as you know, PCI Express cards, there are 2 that are in there. The one of them has the I forget what it's called. I think it's a perk card. It's the RAID controller essentially mounted down at the bottom, and then I think it's got a ×4 slot above it where you can mount something in there. And I think I have a in my second one I have a NIC card in there, but it's the one over to the side that had 2 empty bays in it. There are 2 PCI Express ×8 slots, and so there are actually adapter, you know, different riser that you can purchase than the normal ones that come with it, that has a ×16 slot in there, so that you could put a regular graphics card in there, with some power limitations, of course, that still apply at boot to this system. I think it's 25 or 30 watts. When it first starts up, it can't draw anything more than that. There's all kinds of web pages on that one as well. But you know, but those extra riser cards, the ×16 ones, the slot is at the top. So if you're trying to use a bigger graphics card, it's not going to fit anyway, if that makes sense. And then you know, they run like several $100s for these things, I guess, because people really want to try to use them for video cards without doing any sort of alterations. So, but there are, you know, with mine, I had the ×8 slots, and there are graphics cards that do fit. So I purchased off of Amazon a GT. Well, so first here's the risers, and so this is the double ×8 slot, and this is what it actually looks like while it's in the machine. This is just the card minus the shell around it, and as far as getting a bigger card in there, there is a way to alter the slot to be able to do that. You can essentially cut out the back part of this bottom one, and you want to use the bottom one because, again, if you use the top one and the graphics card is too big, you know, some of them are dual, you won't be able to fit it in there. So you want to start off with it down here at the bottom, and alter that one if you're going to do it. And I'll do a separate video on how to alter the riser card. I did it successfully just today, actually, with a spare one of these boards that I purchased off of Amazon or eBay. I think I bought something like this. Yeah, it's this MX843, and I think I paid around $10 for it. So I'll do a separate video on how to alter that one. That one's because I looked on there are videos, but they how to do it and the best ways to do it. It's kind of hidden because they're actually for other Dell servers. I think I found one today, just today, after doing all of this for a 2950, but no clear instructions, no how-tos. People talk about doing it. You'll see videos of people having done it, but no, this is what you should be doing in order to make this alteration correctly. Videos tagged with something like R710. So again, this video is going to try to put all this together in one spot for people. This is not how to do it, but this is the fact that you can do it in this video. And then the other thing is when it comes to graphics cards, you got to keep in mind that there are those power restrictions, and I didn't want to, again, there's other videos out there on how these people have, soldered the motherboard and, pulled power from different locations to, run these big giant GPUs in there. I don't need, one of those, what do they call them, the 1080s or TI, whatever, these massive $600 video cards. I'm not trying to make a gaming machine out of this. I just wanted something with a GPU in order to be able to do some video rendering is essentially all I was trying to do with doing the PCI pass-through for it, which I did get working. And again, those will be separate videos for Proxmox and PCIe Express or PCIe pass-through for the GPU. Did get that working. But yeah, just keep in mind if you're trying to throw one of those beast cards in there, or if the card that you put in requires another Molex connector to the card to power it. This isn't like a regular PC. You don't have extra Molex or SATA connectors lying around to be able to convert and just plug in. It doesn't work that way inside of these things without some significant alterations. And again, didn't want to go there. So, that's probably it as far as the hardware lessons learned. But, once you get through all of that and you've got your configuration stable, the one thing that I noticed as well is this thing was very out of date as far as the firmware. And, I want all of the benefits that come along with doing that. Well, here, and I'll show you. This is the video card that I did end up getting. This PNY GeForce GT710. Very important. It's not a low profile, and it does have PCI Express 2.0 times 8, so it fits specifically in the card slot. It's only got 1 gig of RAM, but again, it suits my needs. I did alter a different card today, riser, so I may mess around with a different board in the future. But for today, this thing's doing what I need to do. But moving on to the firmware update piece, if you go to Dell's website, the easiest way that I found to update everything in there, because there's all kinds of different components. And if you're on an older version of the what do they call it, the Unified Service Configurator in there, when you go to Dell's webpage, the normal one, to get updates and support, you can only update certain things in certain ways. Some of them are updatable via a Linux piece. Some of them are only updatable if you're in a Windows platform. So I wanted to kind of get everything all done in one shot, and doing a little digging, you can actually get to this knowledge base link here where they talk about an ISO file, a CD that you can essentially burn, and it has all of the latest updates on it. Well, I thought that's perfect. Well, so you can do the CD or DVD with all these updates, but that being optical media, you may or may not have one of those. And even if you do, I tried that first, and it was failing. We'll get to that. But so I switched over to the to mounting the ISO file onto a USB stick, which I do recommend. I think I used Rufus for it. And but I was getting the same failure, and so I thought that was kind of odd. Well, you come here and it actually talks about this warning right here in the release notes. It tells you how to fix the problem that you get, because you get this file, and I'll put the links in here. This is the essentially box com file repository for these ISOs, and you pick the latest one, you download the ISO file, and you burn that doing Rufus. But when you've booted the thing up and it starts to run, it's gonna error out. And then what you end up having to do when it gets to that screen where it basically tells you to reboot, if you hit Alt F2, you can get to a console, you can get to a command prompt. And then from there, these instructions on this particular web page, which basically this guy here is outlining what's in the release notes. It tells you, the reason it's failing. It's not, mounted correctly, and so it's not running the apply bundles script. So what you do is, you've already got your USB drive in there, so now you just need to know what it is. So there's several different ways that you can, commands that you can run, since this is Linux essentially is what's under the hood. That's the prompt that you're going to be at. I use this one here, lsblk, and it listed out, all of the drives to include, my USB thumb drive. So I knew it was SDC or B or, whatever it was at the time. So that's very important. You need to know where it's mounted in the system to be able to go back here and alter this script appropriately, because what you're essentially doing is you're creating a mount point. Instead of CD-ROM here, you're going to put that device ID SDB or SDC, whatever it ends up being, and then what you're doing is you're creating a mount point for that device, for this particular file structure here, for what's on your thumb drive in that Dell Toolkit Systems folder. And then once that's actually mounted, you're going to actually run the script with this one here. So /, Dell Toolkit Systems DRM files apply bundles.sh. It's going to run that script, and then the actual upgrade of it'll find the current firmware versions that you have in your R710, and it'll compare it with the ones that it has, and then it'll actually run the updates for you once you do all this. Shouldn't be broken, but it seems like an easy fix that somehow they could have done. But anyway, I'll put the links in here on how to get the ISO file, and then that process right there is fairly straightforward, just with the knowledge that CD-ROM piece there needs to be replaced with your actual USB device name. And then, once that's done and the thing reboots, what you want to do, and this is again, you want to get all these things updated before you even get to the hypervisor stage. You want the firmwares and the BIOSes and everything in there as far up to speed as you can get it. Well, that ISO file is only going to get you so far. But what it's going to do, it will actually update your 710 to the latest version of the Unified Service Configurator. And so that was part of my problem, is mine was so old on there that I couldn't go in. I could get into it, but there's a feature in there called Platform Upgrade that you can run that just, it wasn't really an option, or it wasn't working correctly in the older version. Well, after running the ISO file update, I got the latest version of most of the things on there, including that Unified Service Configurator. And what you do is, when you're at the boot menu and it shows you the Dell logo after having run the disk, you want to hit F10, and that'll put you into that unified service configurator. And then you do launch platform update, and then you actually do an FTP server update. It's ftp.dell.com, so if that's not in there, you can do it. And then there's a great video here this guy did, or Spetsnaz. Interesting. Good video. He goes through the entire process. I'll put the link, or you can just type that in, how to upgrade or update Dell PowerEdge R710 BIOS and firmware the easy way. And this is essentially what he runs you through, is the process of using the unified service configurator to do that. So pretty much, this video here, that's it. I'll put all the links down below that I can, or that I think you'll find useful. But this is weeks and weeks worth of trial and error and learning on my part. And for the first video here, I hope this helps anybody that's trying to step into the foray of using an R710. And it's a journey, but again, hopefully it helps somebody. Have a good one.